Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Andrea Giraldo. Welcome to Meetings of the Minds, brought to you by the New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in partnership with BronxNet. This show was created in direct response to the COVID-19 pandemic as a way to highlight the work of our members and partners, as well as to understand the resources they have to help our community in those difficult times. In today's discussion, it will be guided by the New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce Real Estate Chair, Greg Tsougranis, who will dive into discussions on small property ownership. Joining Greg for today's conversation is the Board President for Small Properties of New York, Ann Korchak, who will highlight how her nonprofit organization is protecting the interest of small housing providers and the communities they serve.
Hello, this year is Gregory Tsougranis. We're here with the Meetings of the Minds with Ann. Thank you for sitting down with me for this very important discussion today. We have an individual who is making impact in New York City. And as I've said in the past, I'm very partial to small property owners. And the name of your organization is the Small Property Owners of New York, also known as SPONY.
That's right.
All right, so again, Ann Korchak. Korchak, you are the president of the organization.
I am.
All right, and I met you just by different protests that I've been, or different discussions and protests and events that have revolved around real estate. All right, so do you want to tell us something about your organization just to get us started?
Sure. SPONY is an all-volunteer organization of small property owners. We are the owners that are running small rental buildings. Many of us, 4-unit buildings, or a big part of our core constituency are small rent-stabilized building owners. About 40 plus years ago, a group of small owners met each other at a Rent Guidelines Board hearing and said we should probably organize, and that was the genesis of what became SPONY.
Okay, now a lot of people, it's big news right now. The Rent Guidelines Board came out with their verdict that for 2 years there'll be 0 increases in rent-stabilized buildings. So I just want to be clear, are all of your members rent-stabilized, or is it a mixture of free market and rent-stabilized
Right, we
buildings?
do have some owners that are operating what we would call the naturally occurring affordable housing. So maybe somebody who owns a 1 to 3 family home or a 4-unit building. Those are not covered by rent stabilization, but a really important part of the housing sector that is providing affordable or naturally occurring affordable housing. And then another large part of our constituency or membership is operating old rent stabilized housing, not 421 tax abatement type of housing, but the old rent stabilized housing stock.
Okay, so now a lot of people, people have different degrees of knowledge about what rent stabilization means. Right, but basically there are buildings out there that fall under the Rent Stabilization Act, which means that they fall under the control of the Rent Guideline Board.
Correct.
So not everyone is getting a 0% increase. If you don't live in a rent-stabilized building, your rent can go up a lot more than 0%. So,
it could, right. But with the passage of good cause eviction, which happened in 2024, a lot more units of housing are also covered under good cause eviction, which does limit rent increases.
Right, so I think it's 8.75% now?
Right now, yes.
Okay, so now what is good cause eviction? Good cause eviction basically says there's a list of laws, but it also caps your rent. So it seems like what a lot of our elected officials and the public who are voting for these elected officials believe is that if you cap rents, you solve the housing crisis. All right, but now we've got a lot of increases. Why don't you talk about that since you're the expert?
Okay. Right, capping expenses, capping rents doesn't deal with the rising expenses. We are operating in the most expensive city in the country, and it's very expensive to operate housing, from taxes to insurance, general maintenance. These sorts of expenses are just continuing to increase at an alarming rate, and they go and cap the income, but there's no cap on expenses. And they're just setting us up for failure, right? If you can't operate the housing, the math just doesn't make sense. Math isn't mathing, is what I've heard someone say.
All right, so a lot of people, now, I did meet you at the Rent Guidelines Board,
Right.
and it, I saw a lot of grown men standing up and yelling, "Get a job," to the landlords. So
Right.
do you think that owning a building and maintaining a building is a job, or
Of
it's
course it
not a
is. I mean,
job?
the whole idea of passive income, if you are owning and operating an apartment building, is ludicrous. I mean, I could think of 8 or 10 jobs that a building owner is doing, right? I mean, they're likely the super, they're the handyman. They are doing as much of the plumbing as they can, so they're a part-time plumber as well. They're the compliance officer. New York City and New York State is an incredibly complex place to operate housing. You have many, many compliance and regulatory obligations. So property owners also making sure all that is done. They're the financial officer for their company. And they're also a social worker, right? They're helping tenants navigate their voucher applications. Somebody who may qualify for scree or dree, which is a rent freeze. They're helping navigate the paperwork of those programs for tenants who may need their assistance.
I personally think, this is my personal opinion, but when I was at the Rent Guidelines Board and I actually spoke, it's almost as if the landlords, and especially the small property owners, are being pitted against the tenants.
Yes, I
The
agree.
tenants are having a hard time.
Right.
The landlords, especially in rent-stabilized buildings, are having a hard time, where between 20 and 30% of the rent-stabilized buildings, especially in low-income areas, are in distress, in foreclosure, or verging on foreclosure.
Right.
So it's a repeat of my youth, when we lived in the South Bronx on Sherman Avenue, and eventually the entire community around us was very different.
Yeah.
It went through devastation. It went through the foreclosures. It went through the burning buildings. It went through all of that, which many of the people in the community do remember.
Yeah.
And it just seems as if taxation has a very big part of it. And if you don't look at the numbers, like, for example, we had a recent increase of not only water expenses, but also Con Ed had massive increases. Do you want to
Yes.
discuss that, so that people
Sure.
are aware of the expenses that small property owners face?
Right. July 1st, we saw a 6% increase in the water and sewer charges. So the DEP has an arrangement with the city where they have to rent the infrastructure from the city. So it's really a hidden tax. So the city is using the money that's being raised from the water and sewer fees is kind of plug some budget gaps. So they say to the water and sewer and the DEP every year, I mean, this is what we need to raise, this is the rent we're charging you. And they in turn have to raise the rates on the residents that are using the water and sewer charges. So it's 6%. Last year, I believe, was even higher, I believe. The Con Ed bills just continue to skyrocket. It went up 11% for electric. That was effective January 1, and 9% for gas. And utilities are obviously a must to operate the buildings, right? So you have to pay your utilities, you have to pay your taxes and your insurance before you're even able to take on any maintenance work on the
Okay,
building.
so basically you're saying there was a 6% increase in water. What is it, 11% increase
Yeah.
in
Electric,
electric, and
9 for gas.
9 in gas. And then there's other factors also. But the city did come out with a report, and it basically said that landlords are, the real increase in overall expenses to run a property is 5%.
Right.
All right.
Yes.
But then the Rent Stabilization Board, the Rent Guidelines Board, came out and said 0% increases over 2 years.
Correct.
So basically, you're going to be running at a deficiency of 10% over the 2-year period. Your expenses will go up probably 10%, if not more, and your revenue will be 0%. What kind of effect do you think that's going to have on the buildings that you own?
First and foremost, as I said, you'd have to pay those 3 expenses first before you can do anything, right? Your taxes, your insurance, and your utilities. And with a 0% increase, and we know that the expenses continue to rise, owners are faced with very tough decisions every day. I have a roof that really needs to be replaced, but I can't afford it, so now I have to just patch it. I'd love to replace the windows, but I can't do that. And what happens is the quality of life for the tenants that live in those buildings is impacted by an owner's inability to invest in the property. And particularly the old rent stabilized housing, at the youngest, it's 50 years old, right? I mean, it's going 1974 is the cutoff date. Many of us are operating housing that's well over 100 years old. My husband's family owns 2 buildings. They're 130 years old. These are not buildings that you can just kind of ignore. They are in need of, like I said, roofs and other things that could make the building maybe run a little bit more efficiently, and we just don't have the funds to do that.
All right, so then, some people would say, oh, you know what, if you don't have the funds to manage the buildings, just sell it.
Yeah, I hear that often. Right, but who's going to buy it and be able to run it under the operational framework that exists today? The nonprofit providers, and there is a bias out there now where many lawmakers and many tenant advocates believe that that is a preferred model. But even without paying taxes, these groups are really struggling to upkeep the housing too. They're impacted by that rent freeze. They are impacted by the escalating insurance costs because we live in a city and a state that is very litigious, and there's a lot of risk in operating these properties. They are also struggling with very dysfunctional housing court. The nonprofit models really need to collect 95% of their rent to actually make the math work for their buildings. And they never recovered from COVID, just like the private property owners are struggling in housing court. I know people that are in housing court for years carrying, 6-figure rental arrears, which is so frustrating. It's like, so now a building is receiving violations, but the city hasn't allowed them to collect the $100,000 in rent, which may have prevented some of those violations being issued.
Yeah, I mean,
So they're tying our hands behind our back with zero increases and inability to collect our rent.
what do you think the end goal is?
I believe, based on what I said, there is a bias towards this nonprofit providers, and the ideal scenario for somebody who supports legislation like HSTPA is to continue to defund the buildings, make them not financially viable, and the properties would be either lost to the city or the banks, and perhaps moved into the hands of the preferred nonprofit model.
Okay, backed by hedge funds, you think? Am I being too? So are we basically just wiping out the small property owners in New York City and replacing them with larger institutions, which is kind of like the opposite of what the advocates are even talking about, just because we're pitted against each other? The tenants can't afford it. The landlords are saying the money is not there, and the city's saying that is basically telling them that the money isn't there, predominantly in the low-income areas. I mean, I got a phone call 6 months ago. Somebody said, do you mind handling a receivership for me? I said, how many properties are we talking about? I think it was 25 buildings, 1,300 units
Wow.
in the South Bronx and in Manhattan, which is an astronomical amount of people who
Right.
are living in distress.
Right, nobody wants to live in a building that's in receivership.
And also coupled, you mentioned the 2019 laws, where at least back then, if you did a major improvement to the roof, to the building, you'd be able to increase the rents in order to compensate it. If you
Right.
did internal repairs in the building, I mean, we've talked about these topics before, but when you have 50, 60,000 units of empty apartments, where basically the landlord is saying, you're going to give me $15,000 over a 15-year period in order to do $100,000 worth of renovations. It doesn't make sense.
Right, it's just not fiscally possible
Yeah.
in the most expensive city in the world to improve an apartment for $15,000. And there was some acceptance of that a year ago, and in the budget they upped that number to $30,000. But that's still a drop in the bucket. Since 2019 to now, we had a surge of inflation, and it's like I said, it's just fiscally impossible in almost any borough here in the city to do a bathroom and a kitchen for $30,000.
Now, you mentioned COPA, and we actually met. And
Right.
one thing I'm trying to do here is to give a different voice, because we do want people to live in buildings that are habitable
Right.
and enjoyable and safe. You know,
Right.
but we did meet we did meet now. You know, a lot of people have different ideas about COPA, which is the Community Opportunity Purchase Act. Now, I don't really go down on protests and things like that, but that's where we actually met the first time.
Right.
The landlords had organized an event.
Right, and in the 6 years I've been involved in Spony, I could probably count on one hand how many rallies I've actually been to, and COPA was one of them. And the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act is like the brainchild, right, of the activists who want to move the property into this nonprofit model.
Actually, you know what? We have a clip. I believe it's you at COPA. Can we hear the clip? All right, let's hear what you had to say at COPA, and we'll pick up the conversation.
That they've never been a part of. They are going to tell me as a property owner who I can sell to and how long I have to wait to complete that transaction. And it's incredibly unfair. It's against my property rights.
Tell me some of the people that Spony represents. Who are the people that are in your organization?
So small property owners represents just what we say, small building owners. Lots of people in buildings 4 to say 20 units. The kind of buildings that are in the crosshairs, the bullseye of this bill.
Thank you, Ann.
Okay, so I went down there because I heard that they were going down as low as 3-family homes.
Right.
And I know that the city council passed it, but then it was defeated by Eric Adams, meaning that it was vetoed by Eric Adams because
Right.
they did not get a super majority. I was actually in the chamber at that time. All right, me and a few other people, and
Yeah.
a lot of tenant advocates who were very organized.
Yes.
And
yes.
that was a very interesting experience.
Yeah.
Super organized. They packed the upper tier.
Yeah.
Very loud, very strongly organized, very strategic in how they were organized. They
Right.
have a voice.
Yeah, I think they were surprised at the pushback that they got because it wasn't just small property owners of New York. You know, groups like REBNY, right? The biggest trade association in New York, representing owners and developers. I think they expected to just push it through, and but they started right with 1 to 3 family homes. I mean, how?
It was a 3-family. It started at 3, which is
Right. I mean, it would become so disruptive to the market to imagine going to somebody who owns a 3-family property and say, you know, the family is ready to sell because maybe the death of the owner of the property. Oh, wait, hold on. You're going to have to wait 6 months before
Yeah.
you can complete this transaction. The IRS is only waiting 9 months for you to settle up with them. So it was meant to be very explosive.
when I was there. When I was interviewed, I said they're just jamming up the poor people. If someone inherits a property, and I got to wait, it was actually I think 60 or 90 days. You couldn't put it on the market, and then if somebody said I was interested, then they could trigger another 180 days
Right,
to
right.
get financing. And the thing is that we've been through this scenario before. I've managed buildings, all right, and I've also managed buildings that were rent stabilized. And back in the day when the Bronx was burning, the answer to the solution was to give the tenants the option to buy HDFCs for $250 a unit
Right.
if it was a conversion. But then they also lowered the taxes.
Right.
So here they keep increasing your taxes as a property owner, when the solution is really going to be one way or another to decrease the taxes. But if they keep, putting on the expenses, making it where you can't afford your building, it's almost like they're taking it from you in order to give it to someone else. And then there's going to be, in my opinion, a battle of who's going to get it. Is the tenant association going to get it? Is the not-for-profit backed by the hedge fund going to get it? And then we're going to see the real knives come out because now we're talking about who's in control of real estate. And I just feel as if the small property owner, the person who doesn't have a pension, the person who worked and saved, all of a sudden now they have a
Right.
small building and that's their retirement. I feel as if it's almost, do you think it's a setup?
Yeah, I do believe they're setting us up for failure. I mean, with every compliance obligation, right, which makes it more difficult to run the buildings. The local law 152, local law 157, local law 97, local law 75. I mean, every single thing they come up with, it's it's like one more booby trap, right? Trying to make you have a more difficult time operating your building.
And also, the end result is people are going to, it's eventually for any transfer to take place, even if it's just or unjust, and that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah.
People have to live in squalor for it to happen. So in the end, the people are going to suffer.
Right.
The small property owners are going to suffer, and the tenants are going to suffer. So why don't we show a little video that's on your website
Okay.
about your organization, how to join, and if you're a small property owner, you might be interested in joining your organization, which has about 800 people on your mailing list. Is that correct? Small property owners.
Right.
And about 6,000 buildings. I mean, 600.
6,000 units.
6,000 units.
Right. We're
that-
operating.
That you're operating
Yes.
with. All right.
Yep.
Yes.
Do you feel like you're on your own as a property owner? Well, you're not. There's a whole community of others just like you right here in New York City and state. They know, like you, owning and managing property isn't easy. New regulations, constant compliance, tenant challenges. It adds up. That is exactly why Spony exists. Created by your counterparts who truly get what you're dealing with. As a Spony member, you'll have access to all the information that is important to you, the latest legal updates, practical tips, and more. And the real value? The people. You'll tap into a network of seasoned owners and supportive professionals who've seen it all, and they are here for you. This nonprofit, founded over 40 years ago, is entirely run by volunteers. Membership? Think it's expensive? It's only $1.83 a week. You can't even ride the bus for that. Oh, you're not a mass transit person? Well, just eat one less $2 pizza slice and you're in. It's a small investment for something this powerful. We look forward to welcoming you. Join Spony today and take your place in a community built to support you, your bottom line, and your sanity.
Okay, so that was just a little video that's on your website in order
Yes.
for people to know where to find you, to see if they're in a position where. But now you also do advocacy.
We do.
But you like help landlords with various.
Yeah,
So
I'd like to
we
say.
have about 5 minutes left. So how
Yes.
do you help a landlord? And then what are the hot topics right now in legislation that we should be focused on? Because we talked about COPA,
Right.
and I know on the state level you have TOPA coming up.
Right. But I would say the big things that Spony does as an organization for small owners is educate, communicate, and advocate. So education, we do programming virtually and in person, many times during the year to help somebody, run their property. We communicate with our members, not only through social media or an option like this today, but our weekly newsletter. But the advocacy is probably one of the most important things that we do, and that includes connecting with lawmakers both on the city and state level to let them know that this legislation that they're dreaming up, how it actually impacts people on the front lines, people like the members of Spony who are actually operating the housing. So we do that, with one-on-one meetings with lawmakers or their members of their staff. Through the media and social media and traditional media as well.
What's the top legislation? Because I know that you're out there fighting every day. What's something that landlords should be behind right now?
It's on the city level. COPA was reintroduced, so I imagine
Has it
there'll
changed
be.
at all? Did they bump it up from 3 families to a different amount?
Right, it did change. It is. I'd have to look at the latest version of the bill, but it was. I believe maybe it was changed to 10 units.
So they went up at least.
They
Because
did.
really, a commercial unit starts at 6. I was shocked that they went into the residential.
Yeah. Well, that's why I
banking.
say they're agents of chaos. To come out and to say, that these hundreds of thousands of, 3-family homes might be covered under this was crazy. But on the city side, like I said, COPA's been reintroduced, and on the state side. There's TOPA, like the evil cousin of COPA, right, which would be the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, which I imagine would be even more difficult to pull off as a transaction. On the COPA side, it would be a professionally run nonprofit that may have banks relationships and financing lined up. A tenant opportunity to purchase act, I mean, I can't imagine how difficult it would
Well,
be
I
for a
mean,
group of tenants to pull that off.
We have seen this before back in the days when the Bronx was burning, and the program worked where you could buy your car for $250 because it was burned to the ground and nobody wanted it. It was a hot potato building like we see now. You know, but the point is that you know, one thing that stood out was that there was a teacher that got up and said, "I'm a teacher. I can't afford to pay my rent." Right? And then I was a teacher, and I know that teachers invest in pension funds, and a lot of these pension funds of the city-owned workers that invested in rent-stabilized buildings lost significant amount of money.
Right.
So it's like,
It's not a sound investment for our pensions.
no, but the point that I'm saying though is that what pulled us out of the problem back in the day was when I believe Koch started a lot of this, and he basically said that we're going to take the pension funds from the police, and that was used to rebuild the city. But it was still somewhat of a free market economy, and landlords were able to, you know, take care of their buildings. So I think we're out of time. I just raised some. I was happy that your voice was heard.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I appreciate it.
We're going to wrap it up now. I want to thank you for coming. All right, why don't you tell us how someone can contact you?
Spony, you can find us on the web at spony, spony.org, on LinkedIn, Small Property Owners of New York, on X and Instagram, The Real Spony. And we invite any small housing provider to visit us and hopefully join us. We have modest dues, they're $95 a year, and the benefit that one gets from belonging to a community of other small housing providers, you know, really can't be understated. We communicate with each other all the time through WhatsApp chats and really help one another just in the, you know, kind of regular everyday bumps in the road you hit. I need a new electrician. I have an emergency here. I need a plumber. Can somebody recommend somebody? And just to vent a bit, to share things that are in the news, and to participate in our meetings with lawmakers. You know, it really is very important.
So thank you for your time, and thank you for educating us or expressing your situation. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Once again, for more information on Small Properties of New York, you can visit their website at spony.org, follow them on social media at The Real Spony, or connect with them on LinkedIn at Small Property Owners of New York, Spony. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. I want to thank once again our guest, Ann Korchak, for joining us, and you, our viewers, for tuning in and checking us out. Keep following BronxNet TV for continued coverage. If you're not a member of the New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, you can visit us at www.hispanicchamber.nyc. Once again, www.hispanicchamber.nyc. You can also engage with us on LinkedIn at New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, all spelled out. And I'll see you next time for another episode of Meetings of the Minds in partnership with BronxNet. See you next. Ciao, ciao.